Now that the details about the Fujifilm GFX Eterna 55 are fully disclosed, we sat down with John from Fujifilm to hear even a bit more. Hi guys, I'm Johnny from CineD and we are at the beautiful Amsterdam and I'm here with John from Fujifilm. John, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. We just saw a very nice presentation and first-time footage by very reputable DPs of the GFX Eterna 55. And in all honesty, I was impressed. And I'm very much eager to get the camera in my hands, in our hands, and to see how it works. When we started this journey of exposing the camera, I think over a year ago, the original name was GFX Eterna. Now, suddenly, since yesterday, it's GFX Eterna 55. Where's the 55 coming from?
So the 55 is a direct call out of the image diagonal of the sensor when it's in open gate mode. When you're considering a sensor specifically in the large format category, because there are so many different format sizes these days within the large format category of digital cinematography. You basically, since large format was introduced, VistaVision and full frame was introduced to digital cinematography about 10 years ago. That includes everything from full frame up to the larger 65 millimeter digital cameras. So sensor coverage is a very important part of that. A lot of times the question is, do my legacy Super 35 lenses cover? Do these lenses cover? So since this is in the category of large format, and even further within that, in what would be considered the subcategory of 65 millimeter because of lens coverage, we thought that this product, it would be ultimately clear. Since there is, with the sensor, there's nothing about the sensor that's 65 millimeter. It's just the cinema industry has categorized these formats based on the way they would with film, right, which is off of lens coverage. So it's in that subcategory, but if we talk about this sensor literally as it is, 55 is the most accurate actual spec of this sensor because the image diagonal is 55 millimeters.
Thank you. We have a dedicated article about the full specifications of the camera and also the price, but we'll touch everything. But first I want to ask you, because the specification, the list is really huge. The 5 most noticeable elements or features in this camera that you personally are very proud of, and why?
Yeah. First off, sensor format. I think the size is the 1:3:3 aspect ratio, the 4:3 aspect ratio. I think is very flexible for today's filmmakers. You can go wider with anamorphic and get incredibly cinematic images. If we think about where anamorphic came from within the filmmaking space, it was it worked off of a 4:3 imager for decades, right? And that height within this sensor puts it into a category that hasn't existed in digital cinematography. So that's an intangible that this camera has that you can't get any other way. I think that, and then also just spherically, right? Even if you go spherical, you get 20% more width than you would with full frame. So ultimately, 10 years ago when full frame was introduced to digital cinematography, the common talk track was that you have a more cinematic looking image because you have a larger imager. You can go with longer focal length, get a wider angle of view. That applies here just as much as full frame applied to a more cinematic look of Super 35. So that sensor format, it allows you to scale up to whatever your vision desires as far as going as large as GF43 open gate. The next thing would be the color. Color is core to our color is core to our story. Fujifilm is long been storied within the color space, specifically within our analog formats, obviously. But motion picture imaging has been part of who we are since our beginning in 1934 when we were founded. So the colors of this camera, the flexibility of F-Log2C, I think people would be really surprised by all the color fidelity and all of the information you can get within that space. I think it would change some perceptions as far as what people typically would expect out of a ProRes 422 HQ file.
I saw that there's an electronic ND filter inside, like a variable ND filter inside. This is something that we haven't seen with too many cameras.
So an internal ND, it's pretty commonplace nowadays, right? But what's unique with the ND within this camera is, first off, the size. It covers that full sensor. But also it's the amount of gradations within the full stop range of the sensor. it kicks in at a 0.6, so you start right away with 2 stops of ND, and then you can go variable electronic ND all the way up to 2.1, right? So you get 7 full stops of range. Within each stop, you have 20 steps of ND, right? So we're considering that visually stepless because you can ramp your ND and it just seamlessly applies more density, essentially. So you get a really fine tuning of your exposure, which allows you to control your image.
Okay, let's talk about the price, because this camera is priced now 16,490. And you know,
499.95, yeah.
when I saw the price, I was sweating just a little bit because of different reasons. First of all, this is your first cinema camera, and you will tell me, be kind to tell me in a second, whom are you targeting with the camera? But it seems like the market is moving for kind of smaller, more affordable cameras. So first of all, how did you come up with that specific pricing? And do you think that it's now becoming a rental item, or you really hope to see independent filmmakers still buying the camera?
So independent filmmaking is definitely a target of this camera, and specifically with that format, again, really hammering home that format. There's nothing else that's accessible that's as tall as this sensor format that gives you a cinematic image you cannot get with any other camera. Specifically, if you use anamorphic lenses, if you really want to go for, like many filmmakers, including myself when I was younger, aspired to working with 65 millimeter format film one day, right? When you use anamorphic lenses on this sensor format, it kind of puts you in that category as far as the field of view and angle of view and the different characteristics you get, especially with anamorphic, because that in itself has cinematic characteristics. So not only is this camera, when you consider that, and you consider the price, and you consider the ability to scale up to that or scale down to a Super 35 workflow or full frame workflow, right? You get a lot of creative potential that you simply cannot get with any other digital cinematography camera, right? So when you consider that, I think that's where the price becomes pretty fair, because not only do you get that, but you get that baked in with Fujifilm legacy color that's been embraced for the better part of 90 years. So it's it's a cinematic tool. Independent filmmakers, and I feel like nowadays that applies to a variety of industries, right? Filmmaking incorporates motion imaging kind of across the board now. So anything from actual narratives, documentary filmmakers, you could think music videos, live event coverage.
As a documentary filmmaker, what will be the benefit of using this camera? And I hope you're gonna emphasize, for example, we talked about the electronic ND filter, but I hope you're gonna emphasize the autofocus in some conditions, and is there maybe IBIS? I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about it.
Yeah. So in terms of that, this is a really great run and gun package, specifically with this lens. This lens is a really great pairing with this camera because it uses the G-mount communication protocol, right? So you can see we have these knobs on the camera here. You have one on the optional handle, and you have one on the body just below the lens mount. Those give you 4 channels of different aspects of the camera or the lens you can control. So you get full fizz control. So you get control over focus, iris, or zoom. So you could set that on the dial itself. There's also a selection for ND. So as a run and gun style of operation, if I wanted to, I could kind of operate like that and kind of see how you could do that. But also it's a very lightweight camera, so it's easy to carry around, very robust. Has all the pro style connections you would want as far as video output. And also networking control. There's Frame.io camera to cloud, so you could do anything from quick workflows to review and approval. So there's a lot of different tools in that regard, as far as accessibility, as far as flexibility that would apply.
I just want to highlight and say that the camera will work. There is autofocus enabled if you work with certain G-mount lenses. That's important. And the lens that John was talking about is the new 32-90 millimeter. It's not a Mista lens. It's actually a completely new lens. It's only
$5,999.95.
Which I thought it's quite good for. Let's go like a zoom lens, a G-mount lens. So is there IBIS here or not?
So there's optical image stabilization in the lens. There's no IBIS in the camera.
Okay. John, looking backward, because when we started the process of covering the camera, I think, as I said, it was a year ago, and every time you kind of disclosed a bit more information. Now, when we look backward, do you think that was justified, or you would prefer to give all the information at once and kind of surprise the market?
That's a good question. You know, I believe in creating a heartbeat with products. You know, and you know when we announced the intent to create this product at Interb, we announced this product at Interb last year. It still needed a lot of development, right? So there was obviously a plan, and there were things in place, and we were building the camera. But for each of those shows, we felt there was different information that applied to the different industries that those different, you know, who attend those different shows. So, so we felt that at each of those shows, the information we shared was pretty relevant to the different creatives and the different creators who would be attending those shows. So, so ultimately, I think that was the best decision there for that.
One of the things that many people are sensitive about is actually that camera in that category and price range does not shoot internal RAW. And I think the maximum is ProRes HQ 422. You touched this a little bit before when we talked about the film simulations, but how do you feel about it? You know, it's like that's one of those things that are really, for people, it's kind of make or break. How is it for you?
Yeah, you know, I think when I think about that, you know, filmmaking is a very specification-driven field nowadays, right? But it's always existed with limitations, right? Internal RAW and how accessible RAW is, that's relatively new in this industry. You know, it used to be that you would have to record externally for RAW on commonplace, right? Like when, not even that long ago, right? 20 years ago, which I guess feels a little longer now than it felt before. But anyway, you know, so I think if we think back to what filmmaking is, it's really about telling it's really about telling stories with beautiful images, right? And making sure your tools and your formats can support that. We feel that the ProRes 422 HQ image out of this camera would surprise a lot of people, specifically with F-Log2C, the flexibility you would get out of that. You know, it allows you a lot of color range, and it allows you a lot of flexibility in post-production. And I think the conversation around RAW has kind of exploded a little larger than maybe it has in the past. Obviously, you have a ton of protection. Obviously, you can archive that quality, but it kind of pushes a lot of the work into post-production. So it kind of becomes a question of, am I someone who does most of my work in production, or am I someone who does most of my work in post-production? And that's a valid conversation depending on your workflow and depending on your delivery. So this is a camera that you get it in camera. You know, this gives you a beautiful looking image. ProRes 422 HQ, again, it's a format that the industry worked off of for a long time when digital cinematography started, and it's one that's perfectly serviceable nowadays and perfectly suitable for beautiful images. So to use that, take advantage of the large sensor, you have that available. And then if you do want RAW, you do have the option with this camera, right? You can do RAW via HDMI. You'll get 12-bit RAW. So you can go that route. But I would also say, you know, this is our first step into a dedicated digital cinematography device. It's our first ever dedicated digital filmmaking camera. So to really step into that space, I think, is something really important for Fujifilm. It's very important to us, and we're really excited to see what people do with this imager and this technology. And we're excited to see, you know, how we may evolve in the future based off of that. Good. So one other thing for documentary filmmakers that could be really nice and important is the internal battery. The internal battery actually gives you the ability to be really flexible, and it's something that on dedicated, you know, digital filmmaking cameras, it's kind of a new thing for a more robust, larger build. You know, a lot of the smaller builds, of course, have it. The more hybrid style builds have it. But a dedicated digital, you know, filmmaking camera within the cinematography space, the more production space, that's a pretty new feature that gives you a lot of flexibility, and it also really highlights the power efficiency of this camera, because for how large of a sensor that is, it's about 21 watts of nominal power consumption, which is pretty remarkable considering the sensor size. So the ability to use a battery like that and run the camera for 20 to 30 minutes, with a sensor that large is pretty remarkable.
I remember in early conversations that you were talking about additional LUTs, that the camera will actually, you'll be able to put the LUT on the F-Log C, for example, and have, enjoy the greater dynamic range next to the color simulation. Is that will be out in time when the camera is out? And also maybe you want to explain a little bit more about what this thing is.
Yes, and that's a core part of this camera we're really excited about, is the inclusion and the availability of a variety of 3D film simulation LUTs that will be downloadable from our website, and you can plug them into more high. And you can plug them into your pro style video workflows, where you would have a 3D LUT to load into things like accessories, the body itself, or even use in post production. So you'll have a variety, right? You'll have a variety of the resolution of the LUTs themselves. But these LUTs are all going to be creatively tuned to our film stocks, inspired by our film stocks. So you'll have the ability to work those in, which we're really excited about as a further embrace of our color. And then you'll also have the 20 internal film simulations, which are more tailored for quick turn style workflows, and just give you the ability to really deliver quickly with really intentional looks, and really have a more expedited workflow for those types of workflows that call for it.
So when the camera is out in October, those film simulations will be out too?
Yes, the plan is for those film simulations to be available once the camera is available.
John, as always, great pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. Guys, thank you very much for watching. And of course, if you have any questions, please just write in the comments. Fujifilm people for sure will see. They also want to identify different trends. It's very important for them. They want to be with the finger on the, finger on on the pulse, and just that's right. Good. So thank you very much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.